Well, welcome, Grady. Thank you so much for agreeing to appear on our podcast. So, we're going to be showing Police Story 1 and 2 on the 16th of March, I believe.
That's correct.
You contributed to the Criterion Blu-ray package. What did you do?
Not a whole lot. Basically, they just had me in to talk about sort of Jackie Chan's evolving image at the time, and then to shoot my mouth off about it's kind of the way technology affects the development of Hong Kong action movies and the choreography. But really, it just wound up talking about Jackie. It's very unfocused. I think it's the one feature on the disc that people will skip. Most likely.
No.
Especially because this disc keeps getting more loaded by the week. I just saw they added the Japanese cut of Police Story 2, and they found the television show where Jackie and all the Little Fortunes surprise Yoon Jim Yoon, their old master, on TV, and like everyone cries. Or maybe they surprise Jackie. I'm not sure. Someone surprises someone and everyone cries. It's a happy surprise. It's not like Jackie's surprised by an illegitimate baby or something. But yeah, so they keep adding stuff. So I will definitely be the least interesting thing on there.
Well, then we're done.
Thank you for your time. Well, they promised that you were going to tell us everything we needed to know about Chan's screen persona and action filmmaking techniques. So why don't you redeem yourself now, and you can do it for us.
The funny thing about this, though, was, it was weird to rewatch the two movies back to back, because Police Story 1 is out of nowhere, right? He hadn't done a contemporary movie before, and it was a really new thing. And Jackie was, like, super pissed off at the time because he'd just done The Protector with, what's his name? Was it Glickenhaus who shot The Protector? And he really hated doing that in the States. It was the Hollywood cop movie, and he was like an angry, dirty Harry cop. And then he is doing Heart of the Dragon with Sammo, where he plays like a cop, like a hard-ass cop. And it's a great movie, but he's like this really hardcore dude. But it at least is made Hong Kong style. And so Police Story was kind of like his attempt to be like, here's how you really do this. And so he had a lot to prove. He spent a lot of his own money on it. Like all the cars in it are his cars that he bought out of pocket. The apartment that Bridget Lin is in is one apartment that he owned. Like the equipment, he was buying all his own equipment for the first time. And so it's kind of like, it wasn't like he made hit movies, but he wasn't this global superstar the way he was a few years later. And he really had something to prove with the movie. And then you watch Police Story 2, and Police Story 2, I love it, but it's a much longer movie. It's a much looser movie. He made it because there was an audience demand to make a sequel for the Japanese market, and he'd had a couple of movies that hadn't performed as great as they wanted them to. And so it's less urgent feeling. Like Police Story 2 has amazing set pieces in it. And you can see him really experimenting with like car stunts more and with fire and explosions, but it just feels, when you watch them back to back, it feels less urgent for some reason. I actually think the Japanese cut of Police Story 2, even though it's longer, is kind of like, I think it's longer, but it's kind of a lot more fun. There's a little bit of extra character building stuff in it. And I know Criterion was trying to get, I think, the Japanese cut for Police Story 1, which is really, really ridiculously different. But I don't think they could secure the rights for it. So I don't know. Did that answer it?
See, that's interesting that you say that, because that was my impression when I first saw the two movies. But I would drag people to see them. They played at a double feature at Cinema Village several times, and I would drag people over to see them. And every single time, people would say, "Wow, that Police Story is good. That Police Story 2 kicks ass." I mean, everybody liked that. It was as if that was his Hard Boiled or something, same thing. It's like when I first saw Hard Boiled, I said, well, that's not the John Woo I know and love, but it's become the film that everybody adores.
Well, this is the second Alien all over again, right?
Yeah.
And people of younger generations than mine, they all prefer the second Alien film.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Jackie Chan? Did you ever have an opportunity to talk with him?
No, I mean, only in like a public setting. Like when we had him at the New York Asian Film Festival years ago, like I did the onstage Q&A, which was great. I mean, but he's so polished, you know what I mean? He has the stories he tells, and he's got one for every occasion. And if you watch enough interviews with him, you'll see them kind of repeat. I mean, he's great with the audience, but, you know, it's the place I actually think he comes across the best is in the books he does and in the weird blog he wrote for a while. Because the 2 books he's done, his like autobiographies, like the old one, I Am Jackie Chan with Jeff Yang, and then this new one with his assistant, it's all about being drunk and spending too much money. He's really self-critical in them and really like talks a lot about the flaws in his movies and stuff. And in the blog he used to keep, he kept it for like 3 years. I think it was around the time of Rush Hour 2. And I think his assistant was writing it, but he was really involved. And it was just him on publicity junkets, and he could never leave the hotel suite. And so, like, he'd eat dinner alone and, like, just watch the Home Shopping Network and order, like, 26 treadmills. It was really weird. But it was just, like, the portrait of this lonely guy who had everything, but he couldn't hang out with anyone. So because I've always wanted to, like, you know, you always wonder if filmmakers are happy with their movies. You know what I mean? And like, because I assume when he watches his stuff, he only sees things he could have done better and places he fell short, like anyone does when they see their stuff. But you know, I wonder if the reason people like Police Story 2 is in my memory. The big action set pieces are so amazing. There's the playground thing. There's the explosion in the mall. There's the bus jumps. You know, there's that warehouse explosion and fight. But when you watch it all together as a movie, I don't know, it lacks a little of the verve that the first one does.
You know, we're skipping over your part of this, Grady. How does one become an expert in a film genre?
I'm not an expert by any means. Like, there are so many people who know a lot more than I do. But I know a lot for a guy who speaks fluent English. And I'm good at public presentation. And so there's people who speak English who know a lot about Hong Kong movies, a lot more than me, but they're not great at public speaking or writing. And there's people who are, you know, great at speaking and writing, but they're English, and they know more about Hong Kong movies than me, but their English isn't as good as mine. So I sort of occupy this Venn diagram, like where I'm just good enough on all 3 that I muddle through.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Now, you mentioned having Jackie at New York Asian Film Festival. What is that?
Well, Paul, the New York Asian Film Festival, it was founded in 2000 by Goran Topalovic, Brian Noss, Nat Olson, and some ass named Paul Kazee, and me. But yeah, we had all been dudes who used to go down to Chinatown to watch Hong Kong movies at the Music Palace. And I didn't go to the Rosemary so much because those movies were dirty movies. But I know y'all did. And I'm a nice boy from South Carolina who doesn't do things like that. And the Music Palace was closing and had a for sale sign up. And we were like, well, who's going to show the fun movies? Like, the art house movies are fine. Wong Kar-wai, Zhang Yimou, all that stuff. But the fun stuff like Stephen Chow and Jackie Chan and all that, no one. I mean, those guys weren't part of the canon yet. And or at least the white person canon. And none of us knew what we were doing. I think you and I were both office managers for nonprofits. I was more of a glorified receptionist. You were an actual office manager. Brian worked at Chase Manhattan Bank. Goran was an electrical engineer. And Nat put his money in and then moved to Hong Kong and was like a DJ for 15 years or something. But we just all threw in $1,000 each and started showing these movies. And we were lucky enough to stumble into the Anthology Film Archives, who helped us out. I mean, really showed us how to do it. And we just sort of learned by doing. And it just got to be a bigger and bigger headache every year. And now to figure out how to stop it.
A headache, yes, but you must have some amazing memories. Yes?
That makes it sound like we're at a funeral.
Oh my God, no.
It was a lot of fun to do. I mean, the thing for me that I loved about it is for 15 years, 14 years, I mean, I don't know how Paul feels, but I got to stand in the back of a movie theater in New York showing Hong Kong, and like showing Asian movies from all over the place, and movies that meant a lot to me. And so it was really lucky to see how audiences reacted, sort of like what they liked, what they didn't like, what worked for a Western audience and what didn't. And also, it's really, really fun to show a movie you love to a room full of people in the right context and have them like really get a kick out of it. Like, it's really, I don't know, it's a really nice feeling. I don't know, Paul, what'd you get out of it? Anything?
Oh yeah, well, the same thing exactly. It was nice to be able to know that films that we loved, that we introduced them to other people and they would come to love them. Some of those films would sprout legs and go to other festivals and stuff. So it was very rewarding. Personally, made me feel like I had decent taste in cinema.
Was the film fest responsible for any kind of distribution for DVD pickups and anything like that? Because you're kind of bringing these movies to the United States that didn't have any kind of distribution in the United States, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the big one I would say is the movie that's on Criterion, House, the Obayashi movie.
Right.
I mean, we were working, Mark Walkow was a member at that point, and he knew that this movie was one that, like, Criterion licenses a lot of stuff they don't release. It either comes to them in a package with another title, they get 7 other movies, or they just pick stuff up in a library, and they can only release a certain number of discs. And they had this restored scan of House sitting there in a print that they weren't doing anything with. And Mark really believed in that movie. And so we screened it, and it really became this cult hit. I mean, I think that movie screened midnights in New York for like 4 years after that. And they put it out on this loaded disc and all this stuff. And so that was one. But to me, there was a few here and there, but to me, Save the Green Planet was another. I think that we really pushed. We were the first people to ever show Johnny To movies outside of, or in the North America outside of Chinatowns, as this is a filmmaker you should watch. And also we were the first people outside of Asia to show sort of the new Korean cinema back in like 2002, I think, or 1, maybe 2001.
I think, yeah.
Was it 1?
Yeah, I believe so.
We did Korean Cinema Attacks, which was like, JSA and not The Quiet Family, but The Foul King, and, E.J. Young's early movie, and Affair, and all this stuff, and these Kim Ki-duk's early stuff. All these movies have gone on to be, like, huge. These directors have gone on to be huge. Barking Dogs Never Bite. And kind of we were the first person to show it here. But to me, the more interesting stuff is the stuff that missed. Like, we showed this movie Kekasili about poachers in. Do you remember that, Paul? It was the Mountain Patrol one, the poachers.
Yeah, yep.
And the audience went bananas.
You liked it more than I did. I enjoyed it. I wasn't as passionate about it as you were.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like Don Krim, who was running Kino at the time, really wanted to pick it up, and I think it would have played well. And he came and saw it both times and got a screener, really agonized over it because they'd had a bad run of luck with Asian movies. And finally he decided against it. Another one was, Paul, it wasn't The Man Who Stole the Sun, the Japanese one?
I remember the title. I don't remember that movie at all.
70s Japanese one about the high school teacher who builds the atomic bomb.
You sure I was there?
We showed it. This was like 2014, and we got this. I'm not sure if it was Mark or who, but maybe it was Sam. But like, really tracked this thing down and got Toei to give us this beautiful print for one screening, and everyone went nuts over it. I mean, it's this weird, insane 70s Japanese movie about a nuclear terrorist, but it's really surreal. And like a lot of distributors wanted it after that because they thought this was another House. And I think it was either Toei or Toho just wouldn't play ball or work with them. Wow. And then the one I will always regret is Jackie Chan's Little Big Soldier, which I was a huge fan of. And we showed it. And I tried to get all these distributors to come because at the time, Jackie was about to release his 100th movie, however you're counting his filmography, and they were doing this huge push behind Chinese Zodiac. I think it was like 2012. And this was such a better movie. And I thought it would play art houses. I thought it was like a Sony Pictures Classics movie. And like this would be counter programming. And like, Jesus Christ, you got Jackie Chan. and you've got this movie you could pick up for a song that's a really satisfying movie, but a smart movie and a sad movie and
Yeah,
a
easily
passion
I
movie.
went to see
I
that.
couldn't even
It
get a
was-
distributor there.
Yeah,
That was a great
easily the best thing he had done in
Yeah.
years at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And we literally, because Jackie Chan, people at that point were associating with the tuxedo and the
Oh, boy.
spy next door, and like
Medallion.
literally no distributor would come.
I'm not usually associated with bringing the conversation down a notch in culture, but I guess I had so much fun when Noboru Iguchi was director Noboru Iguchi was having darts thrown in his ass. I mean, to me, that was downtown New York Asian Film Festival.
Yeah, well, you can only do that with filmmakers who are really in on it. I mean, when I can't remember the name of the director who did the movie Cow, and we gave him his award dressed as a cow, or the guy who did that movie Maronier, the Japanese puppet movie. And like he had this puppet Godzilla dressed in a Yankees uniform, and he waited by the theater door and insisted that every audience member shake Godzilla's hand on the way in. That stuff was great.
That is wonderful.
Yeah, he was a little odd.
So was the movie.
So, I mean, we can talk now about new Subway Cinema, right? And
Yep.
is that the new vibe? I mean, are we trying to bring people back to the original guy in Godzilla suit, darts in the ass vibe?
Yeah, well, no, the thing is, the New York Asian Film Festival, which is sort of the thing we did for years, which is now at Lincoln Center, it just got so huge. And like all these big guests were coming over and all these big sponsors. And look, sponsors want their photo op and they want their value for their money and they want a fancy event. And it was just getting cumbersome. It was like the downtown fun, like wacky stuff was, it just wasn't matching. And so we sort of split. And so it's also logistically, it's just the NYFF part, they need their own credit cards and bank accounts and all that. Like I'm really tired of every time they start buying plane tickets for the festival for the guests, it's like the credit card gets shut down and I have to go into the bank and explain that we're buying a lot of tickets. We do this once a year. So they're going off and doing the New York Asian Film Festival up at Lincoln Center, and the rest of us, Paul and myself and Goran, and a lot of the volunteers who are going back and forth between the two, we're just doing the dumb fun stuff. Like we just did the Hong Kong-a-thon, which was like a 12-hour marathon. It was a blast.
Sold
it was the most
out?
fun I've had in a movie theater in a long time.
Yeah, completely sold out.
Yeah, completely sold out. And what Paul was saying earlier about it's fun to show stuff to people. We've done a Hong Kong-a-thon before then. It was sort of an unofficial Subway event. This is an official one. But a movie we showed at the first one, Cheap Killers, which is insane, became like, I was worried about showing it. It became like the one everyone talked about. And at this one, I heard so many people going on and on about Hot War, which is a really fantastically terrible 90s movie with Ekin Cheng and Jordan Chan. And just the fact that we were sitting in a theater watching Jordan Chan and Ekin Cheng talk about virtual reality and computers, was so much stupid fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it far more than I did looking at the screener when we were trying to choose films for the event. I just thought, oh my God, this movie is awful. But on the big screen with the right crowd, I thought it played well.
Like the Michelle Yeoh Project S. Like when you watch that on your own, you're like, okay, it's a fine movie. With an audience, it kills.
Speaking of Michelle Yeoh, I mean, Super Cop 3, Police Story 3 was called Super Cop, right? And it had Michelle Yeoh. Is that right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Criterion didn't want to keep going, and because that's a beautiful film too. I mean, that's an amazing.
Miramax.
Right stuff. Okay.
So no one's getting a hold of anything. I think actually Dimension, but I think their library's on ice right now.
Okay. All right.
And what's next? Now, we know you wrote a novel, and what's happening in Grady's life?
novel? He's written 14 in the last 3 weeks.
Oh my.
I'm doing rewrites on the next book. It was supposed to come out in the fall, but but people who are not me missed their production schedule deadline, so it's coming out in March. I've got a movie that's in post-production called Satanic Panic that the Fangoria guys are putting out. That's basically a some really rich one percenters are having a all-night ceremony to raise Baphomet, and you get hungry, so they order pizzas. And they've lost their virgin for the virgin sacrifice, and so the pizza girl who delivers is a virgin. So it's sort of pizza girl versus Satanists. And I'm working on a movie right now with a director who you would know if I said his name. He's not like, it's not like Christopher Nolan, but he's someone you'd know. He's been on the festival circuit.
Does it rhyme with
this is gonna be his
Schmielberg?
next film, and it's about drug dealers fighting over prestige animals. Like every drug dealer wants like a lion on a leash, and so this is about like the vets and the keepers who service prestige animals. And then I'm doing right now. I did that book, Paperbacks from Hell, which is sort of a history of the 70s and 80s horror paperback boom. And one of the books in there, I'm trying to do a script of. The author was foolish enough to option me the rights. And so it's basically H.P. Lovecraft monsters versus the mafia in early 90s New York. It's the most ridiculous thing. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
What's next for Subway Cinema? When's your next event?
Go for it, Paul.
No, you're the guest.
It's Old School Kung Fu Fest, which is May 3rd and 4th. We're doing it at the Anthology Film Archives. And we kind of had so much fun doing the Hong Kong-a-thon where we don't announce the titles before they hit the screen.
Right.
And people seem to like it. It makes it more fun. So we're splitting this up into chunks and basically doing a movie and a party on Friday night, the 3rd. And then on the 4th, we're doing 6 back-to-back old school martial arts movies. We're doing 3 of them that are huge celebrities movies before they were famous. So it's international superstars like you've never seen them before. And then we're doing 3 movies that are like mashups. Like you'll always find these Hong Kong old school kung fu movies like it's a kung fu western, it's a kung fu musical, it's a kung fu sci-fi movie. So we found 3 amazing genre mashups, like kung fu movies plus. And so we're doing those on the back end. And the fun thing about this stuff is so many of these movies, they look like garbage when you see them at home. They're pan and scanned, they're cropped, they just look like dog shit. And usually the prints we get, a lot of these movies were shot in scope. We try when we can to get them with subtitles, although that's not always possible. But the prints look good. And so it's seeing these movies with an audience on the big screen, like you're like, oh, this is actually made with a fair degree of skill. And, this is not a piece of crap for Saturday morning. Sometimes they are.
Hard to believe that the print of a kung fu musical wouldn't be, so dog-eared because everybody's watching that.
Right, I know.
And does that apply to also the Police Story movies? Because when I first seen them, I've seen them on home VHS, which was obviously I don't even think it was Paniscan. I think it was just cropped. So the new prints that we're going to be showing on the 16th. Are they kind of nice and pristine? Were they new transfers and all that kind of stuff? Can you talk about?
Yeah, they're restored and the sound's been remixed and everything, and they are incredible. I actually watched the Police Story 1 restoration in a movie theater with an audience here, and I'm curious if this phenomenon is going to repeat up in Schenectady. But at the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of 80s stuff, and Jackie's got the big poofy hair, and everyone's in their 80s
Sweaters.
gear, so people are laughing.
Yeah.
The subtitles are good, but they're not perfect. There's still some like weird Hong Kong-isms in the English subtitles, and people are laughing, and people pee their pants, ha ha ha. And as the movie progresses, people start appreciating it more and more, but when it gets to the final action scene, I'd forgotten how relentless that is. And when you're watching it on a screen that's bigger than you, where the sound is like crystal clear, so you hear every impact, every blow. Like there was a moment in that final action scene where the audience was just beat down. Like you felt like you were getting punched in the face. Like it's just, you just sit there open mouth because it feels so brutal. And I'd never felt Police Story feeling brutal before, but in the best sense of the word brutal. So it was like brutal lovemaking, it's like it's good brutal.
Good.
So I'd be curious if that repeats, that the audience goes from ha campy 80s movie to that's pretty good, to holy shit, hurts my soul.
Yeah, we had Natural Born Killers on the big screen, on our giant screen last week. And for a person who's only seen it on disc before, even good versions, I was now all of a sudden embarrassed to be a fan of the film. It was shocking again, completely
That
different.
movie is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I saw that with my wife at one of those screenings when it came out, when people are like, do you want to see a free movie? And you go in.
Oh,
It's like one of
wow.
those, like, and so we went in, and it's this packed theater, and people were there with their kids.
Oh,
and when
wow.
it gets to the part of the movie where it breaks and goes to 1 year later, it's after that giant drug zone sequence, and then it goes black. Some guy in this voice of like existential despair goes, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it is
was
that movie.
amazing.
It's my wife's favorite rom-com, so
Yeah, my student
Yeah.
loves the movie with a passion.
she adores it.
Great.
Well, this
Yeah.
is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Are we going to have Grady come up?
Yeah,
for our
we
event?
got to get him come up again.
Yeah.
We just got to figure out an angle.
Yeah.
You don't need an excuse, Grady. Come up soon. Awesome.
Anytime I'm invited.
You're anytime, dude. I'll send you our schedule. If there's anything on there you think that makes sense to attach yourself to, consider yourself attached.
Awesome. Well, Schenectady's all civilized now too, so
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'm not scared anymore.